This week on the Hollywood and Toto podcast, we share the ego behind Selena Gomez's Instagram fail for the ages. We talk to actress Madison Lawlor about her new film Green and Gold and how it's just about as heartland-friendly as you could possibly imagine. And we'll go quickly through the plight of Anthony Mackie, another MCU star who said the wrong thing on the press tour, and boy, he is regretting it as we speak.
Welcome to the Hollywood and Toto podcast. Entertainment news and reviews without the woke Hollywood narrative. Free speech, free expression. Now that's entertainment. And here's your host, award-winning film critic, Christian Toto.
Well, it's Instagram and Selena Gomez can cry if she wants to. The Emilia Perez star sobbed uncontrollably this week because people were being rounded up by the evil Trump administration. Of course, the people in question were illegal immigrants. They committed heinous crimes, and ICE agents were bringing them to justice, getting them out of the country. And for that, Selena Gomez cried and wept and wailed. Just so sad. And then, after being attacked by people on social media, probably saying, Selena, don't you realize the people that they're kicking out of the country? They're bad dudes. Well, she took the post down. Talk about lack of courage. Dan Rather would not be pleased, that's for sure. My fellow conservatives had a field day with Selena Gomez's shtick, and I can't blame them. And truth be told, I piled on as well at HollywoodInToto.com. Well, got my plug in for the week already. But I wanted to focus on one part of her rant, her sobbing story, that I think a lot of people overlooked. I want to focus on this particular quote from her now deleted post. She said, "I'm so sorry. I wish I could do something, but I can't. I don't know what to do. I'll try everything. I promise." Everything? Is she going to pull one of those crane kicks from Karate Kid and take out that evil, dastardly Tom Homan? Is she going to raise a private army and stop ICE agents from arresting the people in question? Is she going to build a wall around ICE facilities across the country? What is she talking about? Talk about an ego out of control. This one actress with admittedly a huge Instagram following, she thinks she can change the policy of the United States, policy that most Americans agree with, a policy that's bringing people who have done terrible things to justice, or at least getting them out of the country for now, hopefully forever. What is she talking about? Absolute hubris. I'm surprised that more people haven't focused on that part of it, but I get it. The sobbing and the weeping and the gnashing of teeth. It gets a lot of attention, and rightfully so. I think you could say the saddest part of all is how the legacy media covered this story. It was 100% sympathetic to Selena Gomez. No criticisms, no context, no curiosity about who is she defending. Now listen, in the weeks and months to come, there may be more mass deportations going on. It could involve people who just entered the country illegally. And certainly that's a different conversation. And I'm sure we'll be having it very soon. But no, the media didn't really focus on that. It really just said, oh my gosh, she has just so much empathy, so much empathy. Well, she has so much empathy for murderers and rapists? Wow. That's empathy on steroids, I guess. I would maybe save some of that empathy for the victims of those people, but that's just me, and I get a little nutty sometimes. It just goes to show that the legacy media is getting worse, and I think they're going to get much worse in the weeks to come. Anyone who thought that they would have learned their lesson from the election, that they might look at the polling and see how many, many people don't trust them at all and think, gosh, we need to course correct. Oh, no. It's hitting the nos, as the Fast and Furious team might say. They're doubling down. They're tripling down. And you know what? Their coverage of the Selena Gomez story shows it all over again. As Trump would say, sad. But one quick question before we move on. Where do you look for smart, believable, reliable left of center news. Now, you may be conservative. You're watching the show. Chances are you likely are, though I hope I have some liberal friends. And I hope that not everyone who listens is on the right like I am. I want everyone to kind of check this out and have a good debate, have a good conversation. But, if we can't trust the legacy press, and often we cannot, where do we go? I've been looking toward the free press recently from Barry Weiss. I think she is certainly center left as an individual, and her new outlet, it just seems like it's doing great work, trustworthy work. I haven't seen anything that made me suspicious of it, but I'm curious. Maybe leave a comment in YouTube or Rumble, wherever you're watching this show, if you are watching it in that fashion, or you can just maybe send me an email, christian@hollywoodintoto.com. Where do you go for trustworthy left-leaning news these days? Because let's face it, the Trump administration is not perfect. No administration is. They will make mistakes, and maybe some right of center outlets won't aggressively cover them. We need that covered. We need the media to hold politicians accountable. And if we can't trust the legacy media, we're going to have to find someone who's going to hold their feet to the fire and make sure they're doing the right thing. That's just what the media should be doing. So where do you go? Who do you trust? I'm genuinely curious. I've been pretty critical of the argument that actors have to take on roles that they embody. A quick, obvious example, if there's a gay character in a movie, it should be a gay actor who's playing that particular part. I think that's crazy. Actors should be able to act. Listen, we don't want to go the full Breakfast at Tiffany's and Mickey Rooney. That's an extreme example of, oh yeah, that was very wrong. We should never do that again, obviously. But generally speaking, we should give actors the room to create new characters, to change their appearance. They should have that freedom. Now, if you want to argue that more people should be represented on the screen, it's a different conversation, and I'm certainly open to that, absolutely. But this is not the answer. But having said all that, sometimes an actor will bring his or her life experiences to a role and maybe ratchet up the performance a little more. You can just feel it. You can just sense the authenticity. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think that applies to this week's guest. Her name is Madison Lawlor, and she's the co-star of Green and Gold. It's a beautiful story about a dairy farmer played by the great Greg T. Nelson, and he's about to lose the farm. His finances are in shambles. His old school methods of farming just aren't aligning with the worldview of today. He's struggling. And he makes a pretty curious bet. If his beloved Green Bay Packers win the Super Bowl, he gets to keep the farm. Pretty crazy, right? Well, that's the thrust of the story, but it's really more about hard work, dedication, authenticity, and loyalty as well. Now, Madison plays the main character's granddaughter, and she is a budding musician, and she's torn between trying to stay and help her grandfather or spread her wings, go out into the big city, maybe become a big music star.
For my grandpa Buck, farming wasn't a job or even a way of life. It was a sacred act.
Easy, easy, easy.
For him, it wasn't the frozen tundra. It was the Garden of Eden.
Does your granddad know where you're headed?
He knows I'll be home later.
I couldn't do farming anymore. I was on my way out for some bigger dreams.
And as it turns out, Madison grew up in South Dakota, and she really connected with a lot of the themes of the film. She could resonate with what's going on screen, the connection with a farmer, about family, about small town life. It didn't seem alien to her. It seemed right at home. And I think it made the performance all the better. She's terrific in this movie. That's why I was so happy that she agreed to join the show and shares her perspectives on Green and Gold and acting in general. So I hope you enjoyed the conversation with Madison Lawlor, a bright young actress, and I guarantee as much as you enjoy Green and Gold, you're going to be seeing a lot more of her moving forward. I just have a hunch. She's one to watch. Hey, Madison, thank you so much for taking the time. I really do appreciate it. I really enjoyed the film and I loved your performance, and I was very happy to get a chance to chat with you. So thanks again.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Yeah. Well, on paper, it seems like when you get this kind of script, this kind of opportunity, you jump at it. I know your background has some ties to the themes here, but let's get more specific. When you see the script, what jumps out at you, and what had you the most excited about this project?
Yeah, I'm from originally from South Dakota, so there certainly were a lot of similarities or things that I could relate to about this story, specifically about Jenny's character.
Mm,
I really think it's so special to be part of a film that is good in its core and I think
mm,
can be hopeful for a lot of people and relatable for a lot of people, and that tells a story about sort of a group of people that oftentimes I think we don't see a lot of stories about. And
yeah.
I also loved that this film and the script was an homage and a love story to nature, and that's a
Mm,
huge love of mine as well. And I think that the world and the land that we live on is so important and
mm.
deserves to be recognized.
And I feel like that kind of a story, which you just described, a story with dirt under its fingernails, you just don't see as much today. I know there are pockets and there are stories, but it did feel both old-fashioned and almost rare in a way. Does that feel
I
like a fair assessment?
I love that you feel that way because
Yeah.
I feel the same way. I was telling
Mm,
this to Anders, our director. There's a sense of nostalgia and timelessness, I think, to the film
mm,
that is hard to capture, and I think that it it will make the film last a really long time. I
mhm.
love that there's not cell phones in it and things like that. It feels very timeless to me, and I think
Yeah.
can be, yeah. I completely agree with you. I felt the
Mm.
same way.
One of the things that I just talked to the brothers who behind the film, and they talked about the authenticity and having the details. And I, as a viewer, I felt that when you're on the set, what did you see and feel and hear? And was it maybe production design details or script little nuances? Because it registers as a viewer, but you're the actors in the
Yeah.
film. How did it jump out to you in that fashion?
Well, it was so special. I mean, we had amazing production designers. Evan and Morgan are incredible. But
Mhm,
we also got to shoot at these real locations, and we were
mhm,
with on these real small dairy farms and this family's home, and it felt
mhm,
so lived in and authentic already. And then our production design team did an amazing job adding little details that go noticed throughout the film. But I think
mhm,
really getting to spend time on these farms that were just authentic to their core
mhm,
informed so much of their life and our characters' lives, because this
mhm.
is real people's lives. And I think being in that environment was so helpful. And I think it was our job just to take it all in and um, recognize what the day to day of that experience is like, you know?
Yeah. I feel like I spent a lifetime watching Craig T. Nelson on
Yeah.
different screens, different movies. He's so good. You're
Oh,
a young actress. You're working with this guy. He's a bit of a legend in the
yeah.
industry, and holding, standing toe to toe and having this great relationship and complex and naughty at times. Talk about working with him and what you took away from it.
It was surreal, certainly.
Mm,
When I found out Craig was gonna play Buck, I was like, oh my gosh, and certainly a bit
mm,
intimidated. You know, you don't really know what the dynamic's gonna be like. And he just surpassed all expectations. He
mm,
was so kind and generous as a human and generous as an actor. And he has this magnificent charm and humor and
mm,
humanity to him that I think is so amazing. It's like as an actor, all you really have to do is just be there. And I
mm,
learned so much from him, but it was such a treat to be able to have this experience with him. And he is so appreciative of the people that we met and the land and
mm.
nature. And he has such a spiritual quality to him that it was very inspiring in many ways. And I think just kind of being able to share space with him was such a gift for me.
Mm. As an actress, I think I talked to your colleagues. They said you came to Hollywood around maybe 17 or so. It's never an easy transition. The
Oh my
overnight
gosh.
sensations are never there. I mean, just that happens in the movies, if anything. Talk about your journey to getting to a place like this where you're getting these kind of roles. Is it you just never say die? What's it been like for you, that sort of that arc of your professional life?
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's something I get related to a lot with Jenny's desires to move out of the place she grew up and kind
Mhm,
of try to do something else. It was really challenging, the transition,
mhm,
moving from South Dakota to Los Angeles, really not knowing where to begin, not knowing, having any idea how to even start. It took me many years to kind of get my footing, and I'm
mhm,
really grateful that now I feel like I have a better understanding of things, but still I feel like there's so much to learn.
mhm,
But yeah, I think you just have to really love it and Otherwise, it is so hard and so challenging. I think that you just have to be obsessed with it and love it in order to do it, because you have to kind
Yeah.
of, I got to be a little bit insane. You're like, okay, I know, I'm just going to keep going. I'm just going to keep going.
Uh-huh.
And I think that persistence and perseverance are the key ingredient, really.
For a young actress, I feel like there's such an interesting time to be in this industry. There's so much change, and yet there's so many new platforms and possibilities. I mean, Fathom Entertainment is bringing Green and Gold to theaters.
I
That
love
wasn't
that.
around when I was younger. Paramount Plus is doing wonderful things. All these different ways. Do you see it as are you optimistic about sort of this new horizon? And then at the same time, there's so much competition. It's hard to cut through the noise at times. I feel like
Yeah.
it's good, it's bad, it's different. But what's your take as an actress in the field?
I think it's complicated and I think it's complex. I think that what I really don't want to get lost is the value of independent films. And I
Mhm.
think it's, it's different times. We're adapting to having all of these different streaming services, and it's sort of um, happened really fast, that
Mhm.
boom and that change of the industry. I
Yeah.
just hope that theaters never get lost. And I really hope that independent filmmakers still, I hope that these companies see value in that.
Mhm.
I do think you're right though. Now more than ever, you have control over making and being able to tell your own stories. It seems
Mhm.
harder to get more eyes on it because of there is such an oversaturation. But I think
Yeah.
it really, the way that the technology that we have now supports people going out and doing their own thing and not needing to ask for permission. And I think that that's
Mhm.
really, really cool. And if you have the determination, that can open up so much opportunity. And it's nice to know that the barrier to entry in terms of just creating for yourself is not that big. But I
Yeah.
just hope that we continue to kind of, you know, raise up independent filmmakers and support them.
Yeah. No, you kind of taken that into your own hands. You're also a writer. I want to get to your you have a horror comedy, I believe, but
Yeah.
talk about, was that something you've always had in mind, that I want to be a bit of a dual threat, or is it something that happened more recently? How did that come about? To kind of shifting, your abilities in a sense.
Yeah. Well, I've always wanted to write and direct as well.
Mhm.
Figuring out when to sort of make that transition is challenging. But in COVID, I myself and three other women, we co-wrote our first feature and produced it and made it. It was sort of a making lemonade out of lemons situation. We isolated in a cabin with the tiniest group of people, and
Mhm.
really just it felt like we were in film school together. And it was so wonderful for me as an artist to kind of very creatively fulfilling to
Mhm.
be there from the birth of something. And I think it's just a different experience when you really get to be involved in all aspects of the creation of a film. And after that film, which we were so lucky, premiered at Santa Barbara International Film Festival, sold it to
Mhm.
Showtime. We wrote another script, and that's this horror comedy, which we just finished, and now we're submitting to festivals. But I think it's it's really fun to create the characters that you want to play, and you don't
Wow.
really have control over the opportunities that you get access to as just an actor. So kind of creating that for yourself is it's
Mhm.
something I don't think I will ever stop doing. It's hard to
Gotcha.
get things made, but it's so fulfilling when you get to make them.
I think I read this on your website. You describe yourself as a sponge when you're on the set, and you're trying to, like you said, you're trying to absorb different things and seeing yourself as not just an actress, but sort of a multi-thread in a way. What did you soak up on Green and Gold? What was the thing that you took away maybe the most?
Oh wow. I think that I I just loved the way that this set was run because there was so much gratitude felt from
Mhm.
everyone on the crew. I think it was really a passion project, and
Mhm.
I think Anders created this sense of respect for each other and this open line of communication. And I think it was such a good example of people working together, and making a movie can be really stressful, and you're always running out of time, and there's so many things working against you, and you're cold or it's uncomfortable. And I think
Mhm.
when people don't feel like they're on the same team, it makes it even harder. But on this film, really everyone felt like they were on the same team. And so I just I walked away from the experience feeling so grateful for collaboration.
Mhm.
And I think one of the core themes of the film too is community, and how important it is to have community and rely on the people around you and lift people up, and to just
Mhm.
be there for one another. And I really felt that throughout the making of this film as well.
This is not an action movie. There are no big stunts here, but this is a physical process for you, from what I understood. Just being on the set, interacting with farm animals, and talk a little about that part of it.
Yeah.
What was that? A little bit of a challenge to kind of go through those paces?
I loved it. I think
Mm,
it's so great when you get to try something new,
mm,
making a movie that you wouldn't normally be in that sort of situation. There are a lot of examples of that in this film. Learning, the craziest thing for me was probably the plowing, which is barely
mm,
seen in the movie, but behind those huge horses, you're connected to them with this old hand plow. That was really cool. But I just love it, it helps, and it just creates that sense of authenticity for me as an actor too, and really
mhm.
paints the world, and to be able to interact with the world in such a visceral way. I loved doing that. It was such a treat.
Yeah, I mean, I think we often need to kind of step outside, put our phones away for a while, and maybe just put the grass in our hands and get that
Exactly.
experience. When you think about this film, is there a particular scene or moment, and let's not do any spoilers because I don't want to obviously go there, but is
Yeah.
there one particular sequence where you were particularly proud of? You thought, that really worked the way I wanted it to work, or?
Oh, it's such a great question. You know, this is such probably a weird answer, but I'm proud of the thread of Jenny's kind of monologue that you don't see, that kind
Mhm,
of carries the narration throughout the film. I think that by the time that the film comes to its end, um, it has such a nice payoff to it, and I think it does a
mhm.
really good job of kind of connecting the pieces of the story. And so that's probably a weird answer, but am proud of that kind of narrative thread.
Yeah,
In terms of actually filming, I think I'm proud of, oh gosh, I'm trying to reel it all through my head.
that's okay.
What was one of my favorite? I'm really proud of, I'm not going to give anything away, but kind of that final scene that I have with Craig. I think that every time I watch it, I get affected by that scene, and
Mhm,
I feel like that lands right where it's supposed to. And I know that
yeah,
Craig and I, in that moment, were both very affected by what was
mhm.
going on, and I'm really proud of where that ended up, and I think it's right where it needs to be.
Yeah. One of the things I enjoyed about the film is I felt like it was a bit messy. Things aren't tied up into neat bows.
Yeah.
And I expected some bows to be tight, and it didn't happen. So as a viewer, I did appreciate that. Let's segue. Theater is Dead is the film you were talking. We were kind of teasing before.
Yeah.
I love horror movies, and horror comedies are the ultra sweet spot, and they're very tough to do. But when you get it right, you really kind of nail it. Did you have any inspiration of other films that kind of fueled what you wrote, or talk a little bit about the project?
Yeah, it's pretty campy. And so tonally speaking, we were kind of um like Jennifer's Body, what's the one, like sort of Happy Death Day. There's kind of a camp and a fun energy to it. That's that we took inspiration from.
Mhm.
But then there's sort of a trippy aspect, sort of Last Night in Soho vibe to it as well, that we have going on. But I think it's just, yeah, when you can hit and nail horror comedy, like What We Do in the Shadows, I think it's so great. And we just had so much fun writing it and kind of coming up with these ridiculous ideas, because you get to be ridiculous within that genre. There are no rules. So it was just fun to kind of be as playful as possible.
Gotcha. One last question. I just peeked at your Instagram page. It was quite beautiful. And
Oh,
I
thank you.
think you're a photographer. Is that something you can do kind of between movies, between scenes, I know the life of an actress can be very complicated and it's busy,
Yeah.
busy, busy, then there's downtime. Is that something that you kind of lean into at all and
Yeah,
maybe talk about that?
definitely. I've always loved photography. I
Uh-huh.
took my first photo class in high school, and I've always loved photography as a hobby, but then it's something that, yeah, has been this great kind of addition to my life. And there are certainly gaps in between work, which is why it's been so nice to kind of round out other aspects of my day to day with things like directing, commercial directing, and photography. And yeah, I love photography.
Yeah. Is that kind of an eye helpful on the set as an actress, or do you have to say, hey, the cinematographer, the director, that's their business and I can't do it? Or can you somehow weave that in? I mean, just when you
Well,
have an eye for composition.
yeah, I always really love kind of building a close relationship with the cinematographer. I think
Mhm.
knowing what they're capturing, because I do see things, I am a very visual person.
Mhm.
And I care a lot about the visual. I would never overstep, but I like knowing what they're seeing because I think
Mhm.
it can be helpful with knowing how the story is being told in that moment. So
Mhm.
it can help my performance, I think, a lot to kind of know what's being shot visually.
Yeah.
I think more than anything, I'm always just really curious at their approach. I love asking questions and understanding
Mhm.
why the cinematographer chose to shoot that way. I just ask a lot of questions. I'm probably
That's
like
right.
they're probably like stop.
That's sponge quality. I think it's going to come in handy someday sooner than later, probably actually right now. Well, Madison, thank you so much for joining the show. Of course, the new movie is Green and Gold. It is available for one night only, January 31st, via Fathom Entertainment in theaters across the country. Guaranteed there's one near you. Do check it out. Craig T. Nelson, great performance. And we need more movies like this. And I'm so glad that Fathom does what it does because it's such a unique company in this theatrical space. It just brings stories that you don't often see to theaters. I just think they do an amazing job. So I'm glad they're there, and I'm glad you're making good movies like this.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you. Supporting small films. It's awesome.
Actor Anthony Mackie did it. He did the meme. He looked at Rachel Zegler and said, "Hold my beer." Her public comments about Snow White, which is coming soon, really hurt that film's PR efforts, that's for sure. You don't trash your own movie. You don't trash the source material. And she learned that lesson the hard way.
To my
Well,
great regret.
well, Anthony Mackie, in a sense, did just that. He was speaking for Captain America Brave New World, his new movie, in Italy, and he made some rather interesting comments. And just to pull back a little bit here, he is playing Captain America in the new film. Of course, that character was created by Chris Evans on screen in a whole bunch of MCU movies. Pretty big shoes to fill. Now, Anthony Mackie is a very good actor. I like him a lot. But Chris Evans was terrific as Captain America. He just embodied that all-American spirit. I just think he was sensational. I think one of the things that people don't talk enough about the old MCU, classic MCU, OG MCU, was how good the casting was on almost every front. Yeah, Brie Larson, I've got some issues there, and I'm not alone. But generally speaking, Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, Chris Evans as Captain America, Scarlett Johansson as Black Widow, Jeremy Renner as Hawkeye. I mean, just bam, bam, bam. All good actors, great matches. It's one of the reasons why we still love the MCU, flaws and all. But of course, Anthony Mackie, when talking about his new movie, well, he said that Captain America doesn't necessarily represent America. The blowback was fast and furious, to quote another film franchise, and he quickly backpedaled. Now, I have sympathy for actors like Anthony Mackie in a sense. It's not easy to talk and talk and talk about your film projects and never say the wrong thing, the wrong phrase. You know, we're all human. Sometimes things we say aren't as eloquent as we want them to be. Sometimes we have a complicated thought. It doesn't come out the way you want. You
Say
know,
nothing, because you said the wrong thing.
these are actors, they're not screenwriters. So, it's not really their forte in a sense. They are playing roles, reading a script, and now they're coming up with things on the fly. And having said all that, Anthony Mackie, what were you thinking? This is Captain America. There is a legacy to the character. America is in its DNA. It doesn't mean you can't be critical of the character, the films, or, of course, America itself. We make mistakes, but the character is supposed to embody the ideals of America: truth and justice, honor, dignity, doing the right thing. That's what Captain America is all about. And of course, he struggles with that on screen. We saw a little bit of that in Captain America Civil War, which has one of the best battle scenes I've ever seen, by the way. I could watch that right now.
Does anyone have any orange slices?
So, how did he stumble upon that? And you could argue he was in a foreign country. He wasn't trying to be rah rah America, but there's a way to thread that needle. He could have just said that Captain America does represent my country's best values, the ones that we aspire to. And people from all across the globe can identify with those noble virtues. You don't have to be an American to appreciate the fact that Captain America stands for good things. I just threaded the needle. That wasn't hard. Come on, Anthony. You could do better than that. Well, I guess the bigger question now is, will this hurt the box office? And a lot of noise online doesn't always translate to box office receipts. There was a lot of hue and cry about Wicked recently, about that really cringeworthy press tour that some of the stars were on, and the movie made $1 gazillion. So, I don't think it's an apples to apples comparison. But this was a project that was stumbling before this gaffe. The alleged reshoots, the alleged test screenings that went very badly. This was a movie that didn't need any more bad buzz, and it just got a dose. So we're going to have to wait and see if the film is good, if people are going to stay away, or if this is maybe just one too many negative stories to lump on this film. But one thing is certain, Anthony Mackie stepped on a PR rake of his own making. I don't think that's super heroic at all. Well, that's it for the show this week. Of course, thank you to Radio America for having me as part of their great podcast lineup. And if you enjoy the show, tell a friend, share it on social media, leave a comment in the section below, wherever you're watching or listening. We do appreciate it. It makes the algorithms go, hey, maybe that show ain't so bad. Let's give it a try. And of course, everyone be good out there. It's a new administration. Tensions are high still. I get that. Living through some of that in my personal life. But let's just be kind to each other. Let's reach out to each other. Let's think it's not just politics. And even those who disagree with you, just know they probably have their hearts in the right place. They want to do the right thing, and they just have a different perspective on it. So let's keep that in mind, and everyone be kind to each other, and we'll do it all again next week.